You are not what you've done or what you've been through, but who you choose to be and what you choose to do from this point forward. I think I love that quote. People say that, different variations of that so many different times. You are not what you've been through. And I used to always wonder, because, it's like, yeah, sure, I'm not, what I've been through. But then again, I used to always find myself explaining what I've been through every time it was time for me to essentially talk to people about, who I was. And I had to figure out, like, okay, well, damn, if, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be fixing this right now. But if I'm not what I've been through, then who the hell am I, right? Who the hell am I? And I think once I learned that me constantly bringing up those old stories, about what I've been through and how I have anxiety and suicidal ideation, you know how we always used to make those jokes. I used to always bring that up, and essentially that's what you heard when you came around me. That's how I identified myself, and I didn't really understand that wasn't an identity. I didn't realize that I was stuck in the past, you know? And essentially, every decision that I made was tainted with the fear of that shame that I felt that was so deep. And even though I told myself that I forgave myself or moved forward from it, still it was like a huge part of how I understood myself. And so I had to really sit down with that. Like, what do you mean you are not what you've been through? They don't see what you've been through when they look at you. They just see you. They just see who you choose to be, what you choose to do. And I think if you are like me and you were somebody who um, constantly brings up, that the bullying in the school at school and um, all the rejection and betrayals you've experienced, and that's what you understand to be yourself, then I think it's one, that's a cry for help, and you need to speak to yourself. If you need to speak to yourself about it, talk about it. I think we talk at ourselves, but we don't talk with ourselves, and we got to get into the, what, how did that make you feel? Like, all right, bet. Let's talk about mine, right? Let's talk about mine, right? So, essentially, when I was real young, I seemed different to others, or how do I say this? People perceive me differently from how I perceived myself. I'm transgender, right? So, at a very young age, I essentially would go to school, and people would do what they do, and I do what I do, and there wasn't much thinking about it. But there was a time where it was Valentine's Day, and everybody was making their Valentines for their person, and I made it for a girl, and I gave it to the girl, and she looked at me kind of puzzled, and she was like, "You can't give me this." And I'm like, "Why?" And she's like, "'Cause you're not a boy, you're a girl." And so my first thought wasn't, well, girls can like other girls. My first thought was, I am a boy. What do you mean by that, right? And at a very, I'm still a child. So when you're a child, you're basically like a little god running around. So I didn't give a fuck. I was like, okay, bitch, you're a hater. You know what I'm saying? So I went on about my life and wasn't thinking too much about it. I didn't, from that point on, identify as a boy. I just didn't understand what she meant by "you're not a boy" because it just wasn't registering. I knew that I was very uncomfortable with certain clothes, like dresses and skirts and such. Um, and so I'd hate when my mother would put them on me, and those moments definitely felt like my confidence was stifled. Like, I remember there's a picture with me and my cousin Marquand, and I had like a jean skirt on or whatever, and you could see that the smile that I had was very pushed or very performed because I wasn't comfortable. And I remember all the different times that I'd have to wear, my mom would pull out my clothes for school, and it'd be like a dress or something, and I'd just be so pissed. or the shirts with the puffs on the side. I'd be so pissed, right? But I didn't care too much. As a child, things roll off your back pretty easily, even though they stick. It's like they stick and you remember them, but they roll off your back to where they don't really shake you too much. Even the moments of like feeling ashamed because of the clothes I was wearing, by the time I started playing, I forgot about it. So once I stepped into middle school and I started to peep how other people's um, puberty and them having relationships and boyfriends and girlfriends and crushes and stuff like that, it really came down on me a lot harder, because then the question then was like, what is my place in that? Back in kindergarten or first grade or whatever, I had little gender miscomplications. So I'm over here trying to understand what I'm supposed to do. And my first year in middle school, I was going to an art school which didn't have uniforms. So I was going to be able to wear whatever clothes I wanted, not uniforms. And I got really excited. We went to City Trans. I was wearing colorful stuff. I was real excited. Didn't have money like that, so like I had these like turquoise Sean John sneakers. It was terrible. But I went to, I was just being creative. And I went to school and was dressing in those, outfits that I had coordinated. Still to this day, I don't think they was that bad. But, I used to get bullied for it. And then I was going through puberty, and I curse this to this day. My mother gave me secret deodorant, which ain't no grown folk deodorant. And I was having grown folk odors. So I needed me some Degree. Ain't no Dove moving shit over here. I needed me some Degree. The issues around hygiene was hard for me. And then, menstrual cycle is the first time, you know what I'm saying? You're growing up. You're starting to get used to what that means, And then when I tried to do the whole dating with other people thing, it never really cracked for me. And everybody was calling me a lesbian. And I'm like, bro, I'm not no lesbian. What's wrong with you? I ain't no lesbian. I like boys. You see this boy here? I think he's cute. He's a cute boy. I like boys. And I was like, yeah, I got a crush on him. I didn't really have a crush on him. I wasn't really like a lesbian until I sat back and was like, well, I do think girls are cute. And then I looked around, and the girls that I thought were cute were the girls that were not being nice to me. Now, did I start being nice to them and think that, no, I understood that they were not nice to me, and so I wasn't nice to them. But I did find them attractive. But these are middle schoolers. You also got to understand, these are middle schoolers. And at the time, me being a middle schooler, me being a child that was isolated within school, I also just didn't understand, like, these are kids. They're repeating things. They're projecting what their parents think. They don't even understand what they think. This is the most important part, especially when you step back to understand your childhood trauma. The kids that are projecting how they feel about you, they don't even feel that way. They don't understand why they think the things they do. They think that way because they keep hearing their parents think that way, and we have this social understanding where kids aren't valued until they look like adults or act like adults or seem like adults. So kids want to be adults, and any chance that they get to feel like adults, they'll try to do that. So if they see the adults around them tearing each other down, when they go to school, they're going to want to tear somebody down. We make the mistake because nobody told us that, and so we're not prepared for it, and we're internalizing everything. These kids are projecting all these things that they don't know, and we're internalizing all of it. I'm just in school and hearing rumors about me liking these girls that essentially always bullied me, to the point where folks were making it seem as if I was a predator, right? And so all of these feelings around shame grew to be me feeling shameful for existing, for being around, for being seen, things like that. From that point on, I moved from a place of shame. I still to this day, only really wear sweatshirts. Now, granted, I'm a masculine person, and before I was wearing all that, colorful City Trend shit, and that's just not. I don't really dress like that, but I haven't really gone back to dressing any other way since middle school. I find it funny how I was implying that sweatshirt wasn't colorful. I wanted to pop in here and clarify that I'm reviewing through the childhood trauma to dissect how I was internalizing my classmates' actions while experiencing these events from my perspective, so that I could get a better outlook when I zoomed outside of how I felt and started to see these experiences from a whole perspective, a more complete perspective. That would then be freeing myself from those limiting beliefs that I created at the time to justify how I could better control their actions in the future. Once we wash off our personal maladaptations from isolated events, we can overcome and discover ourselves in our pure essence,
and maybe even alchemize these events to strengthen our understandings of the world and how others can attempt to pull us down. I got to the point where in that school, because it was so normalized to make fun of me, my teachers was making fun of me. If I got a question right, they made fun. If I got a question wrong, they made fun. I even, after that point, it got really hard for me to do work or to apply myself to things, because the reaction has always been people, disregarding my hard work, or making fun of me for even trying. And so I went, first of all, I flunked that year. And then I went to a different middle school. And at that middle school, I thrived because, one, I knew everything already. I was learning while I was at that last school. I just wasn't doing any work because I didn't want to be seen. So when he came around to pick up paperwork, I never had nothing, to the point where they just never came by me. But once I got to my second middle school, I was the top of the class. I was so good that I used to help teach the classes. And funny enough, I still didn't do any work through middle school. Not a single homework. I did work. I did class work. Like, if it was to be done in class, I wasn't just sitting there. I would do the work and then just sit there. It's what it's like to have ADHD. But I would never do any homework. And eventually, I would always pass because I'd get like a 99 or 100 on the finals. You know what I'm saying? And so I'd always pass. And I even got into advanced math in 8th grade. Still wasn't doing no homework, but I got a high school credit. You know what I'm saying? So I went to high school, and I still wasn't doing any homework. I ended up getting a job, so that was just another justification not to do any homework. And I kind of passed with, like, bare minimum grades. Like, I think I had a 2.5 GPA. Shame kind of towered over my life, From that first 6th grade year of, like, suicidal ideation, the worst mental health I've ever had to deal with, and then, like, slowly building it back up from, like, the confidence that comes with being a smart person, or the smartest person in the class, but also being real nice, my hyperactivity not being something that was a detriment to me in classrooms. That helped with my self-esteem. To the point where I enjoyed being the person that knew more, but I didn't enjoy being the person that had the best grades, which was, it's kind of always been my thing. I don't care about having the good grades. I care about having the good conversations. So I would always be the ones having conversations about politics with the teachers and all that shit. And what I didn't realize is that they didn't see me as the person that was bullied in 6th grade and was made fun of because of this, that, and they didn't see me as a predator, or they didn't see me as somebody who was trying to hurt them, or, they didn't see me as that. They just see me as the person who, was whatever I was in front of them. And still, though, I kept dragging all of those feelings of all of them internalized things that them girls were saying in my first 6th grade year. And funny enough, when I went to high school, I seen majority of the girls that was making fun of me in high school. There I was, my whole life shifted off the basis of the things that these girls said, and they, was living just a all right life, And so, funny enough, I don't think I was expecting for their lives to be in the dirt. I've seen situations where people have talked down, and then you look back at them a few years and their life is in the dirt. But I think once we realize that so much of what changes us, so much of what we think is our identity is really just experiences that stuck for us and only us in certain situations, and we deserve to experience ourselves in a more expansive way that goes on beyond the memories that only we have. After a while, I realized that I deserve to look at myself differently, especially when I started. I went out to do protesting in 2020. I went out to do jail support, and I didn't really want to be a leader, but when people had questions, I had answers. And there was all these ideas of like, oh, I can't, nobody wants to hear from me, nobody wants to, and everybody was kind of trying to ask me this or see what I thought about that, and da-da-da-da-da. And I really had to step out of, I guess, this idea that somehow everybody else wants to hear from everyone else but me. Like, I think there's this underlying feeling of importance that comes with that. Like, somehow don't nobody else know each other, but they know you enough to hate you already. I mean, and in some instances they do, but in those instances, that it's always foolish when somebody thinks that they know you enough to hate you as a brand new person in front of your face. That's why you can't personalize things. And then when I got into things like astrology and numerology, and I learned that certain things, certain energies are meant to pass through you at certain times so that you can learn things, then I realized, like, wow, maybe shame dug so deep in me because shame was something I was supposed to conquer. And me not doing that work, or always having to do that work alone and never really getting much recognition for that work, was something that was getting me ready for the future, where I will be doing a lot of work in something and it's going to feel like I'm not getting recognition, or it's going to look like I'm not getting recognition, but it has a purpose. You know what I'm saying? Maybe to disconnect myself from the effects that comes with being seen, or comes with people seeing my work. Like, you know what, if you do your work and everybody hating, so what? If you do your work and everybody loves it, so what? You have to be validated enough to not need to worry about what the reaction is going to be, or about working directly against the shame. Learning to know when it is shame and it is fear that's leading your actions. I think that's something that I was meant to learn and really master, because it's going to be necessary in my life. So I think that's another part of really healing those things, so that you make sure that what you've been through isn't considered, or you're not considering what you've been through to be who you are, because that's not the case. You are way more than that. You are actually what you will be, and until you start to shift your perspective towards who you're deciding to be, and what way you're deciding to go, you're always going to be looking backwards. And if you've ever tried to walk towards something while looking behind you, it almost never works. You're trying to go in a certain direction. If you're expecting to move forward, if you're expecting to be successful one day, then you got to know who you're choosing to be. What character are you going to play? Because once you realize you're a spirit and a body, then you realize this is all character development. You got to decide what character you're going to be, what persona you're going to take on, and what goal you're going to go forward towards. And that's how you keep a straight direction. Popping back in to say, when we unveil those memories, pull the wisdom, and detach from the resentment and pain we've attached to it, a lot of the time our life paths, and most importantly our preferred approach to our life path, can rise out of the ashes. And that understanding, paired with a foundational and complete understanding of the self, is the perfect recipe to get you on a path aligned with yourself, and therefore God. It's the ultimate shield against anything of similar nature, because knowing who you are and where you're going will allow you to remember the road you're supposed to be on when distractions try to deceive you and enemies try, or succeed, to knock you down. Just promise yourself, and therefore God, that you'll always get back up and remember the mission. But if you keep thinking that you are everything that you've been through, you are all the ways that people have treated you, you are all the abandonment you've experienced, you are all the failures you've had, then you don't even give yourself the opportunity to be anything else, to experience anything else, to see anything else, because your perception is always going to be off the basis of that. And then it's like, what does your perception know? Because you can't perceive new things. You can't perceive something that you can't understand. So if that's the case, and if you're always basing your perception or how you see the world off of everything that you've experienced in the past, and you're not at all trying to create new perceptions so that they can be materialized in the future, then there's nothing left to do. There's nothing left to happen but for your past to repeat itself, to be a cycle. We all know that energy, you can't just create energy. Energy doesn't, we ain't big banging out this bitch, you know what I'm saying? So energy is something that is moved. Energy, it doesn't just happen. You don't just become famous. You don't just become successful. There always has to be something that happens beforehand. There has to be something to blow up in order for there to be a combustion. you have to put forth the energy towards positivity in order for positivity to happen. Because if all you understand yourself to be is somebody who is constantly betrayed, then what room is there for there to be a healthy relationship to come out of? You know what I'm saying? And if you're somebody who constantly bases who you are off of what you went through, then a lot of times you tend to justify doing things off of the basis of who you are, aka what you've been through, and you completely mess up all that you could be and all that you could do. You dig? Because you're too held down by how you understand yourself off of the basis of those past experiences. So there are some people who, for instance, will go through childhood trauma and then go on to say, so now I don't trust anybody, and they'll spend the rest of their life essentially trying to figure out how they can manipulate people into sticking around so that they can use them. And they'll think, oh well, it's because people always leave and da 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 da, and they'll spend the rest of their life being manipulative to people who probably would have been just fine if you let them freely stay. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you just let them make the decision to stay, you dig? Instead of you doing all of these little, manipulative things here and there to essentially be abusive. And then once they see you abusing them, they're going to make the cognitive the proper decision to be like, I'm going to step away from you. When all you had to do was just step into that relationship being a good person and trust them to make a decision for themselves to stay. But you think that you have to impede on and control other people because of your lack of control in the past, because you consider yourself to be everything that you've been through. But once you understand, yes, I did lack control back then. And honestly, when it comes to relationship, there is a lack of control. When it comes to all relationships, there is a lack of control in it inherently. You are not going to be able to control what someone else does or what someone else chooses to do. Whether it's a friendship, whether it is parents. You can't choose your parent to be, you can't force your parent to be, the best parent they could be or fully present, whether that be emotionally, physically, spiritually, whatever. You can't force anybody within a relationship to do anything, be anything, or to stick around. And instead of healing that understanding and realizing that, it does suck, it does hurt, but I'd rather you be honest and leave than to stick around and be abusive, you decided to be the person that is abusive. And so now folks have to do the smart thing and not be around you. So now you've created a world where you're going to constantly be abandoned because you don't know how to create healthy relationships and respect other people's ability to choose. And that's the way that us identifying with our traumas and our histories can get in the way of who we are going to be and how we choose to show up in the world in the future. And so that's something that I've been working through, because anytime I'm like, well, you did this and you did that, and I'm constantly bringing up the past, I mean, that's another conversation, because we could talk about where defensive energy comes from when people feel harmed another day. But I always have to remember, that when I harbor hard feelings about things that I've experienced in the past, that a lot of times it's me really trying to defend or justify my position in that situation, looking for validation, because I identify myself as a victim in that situation. So that's usually where it comes from, when you constantly feel like you got to keep bringing it up, because you need somebody to be like, yeah, that is fucked up what they did. And that's why people got to go to therapy, because usually when you go to therapy, you talk to them, and they tell you, hey, yo, that's you valid as fuck for that, but let me show you why that's not a justification for you to be a dick. And then, you move on from that. But if you want to do it on your own, if you want to do it for yourself, right, it's okay that you felt victimized in that moment. It's not worth anything for you to say that you were not a victim in that moment, but the moment has passed. Phew, okay, so validation is important, and we have to start valuing the validation we receive from ourselves. Yes, someone hurt you. Yes, someone did something that hurt you, which is different and still valid. You have to remember that once it's over, any recall is you sticking yourself back into the past. It's a form of mental time travel. A known esoteric truth is that time is ever changing, and that truth is so true that we're never really in the present. As soon as you name the present, it's the past. And the more you try to shift your attention and perception to the present, you'll realize that you're really predicting the future, even by the second. So when you allow your thoughts to travel you to the past, you are presently constructing your future to replicate those energies. You're re-traumatizing yourself, reliving the past, till those few days or weeks resonate in your energy for years. Learn to control the mind and free your present future.
And you are beyond that moment. You are not defined by that moment, and that your identity is not stuck to that moment. If you close your eyes and really imagine who you want to be in 10, 20 years, or what success looks like for you, nowhere on that suit or dress that you wear is it going to be written that you went through that, to the point where everybody's going to always know that experience. And a lot of times it's shame and embarrassment that you were ever even victimized in a way like that. And you always have to remember that no one else knows but you. And even if they do, it doesn't matter, because you are not that experience. When people bring up experiences, when people bring up things that you've done and try to use that to make you feel shameful, now you have that understanding on your back to where it's now a shield, especially if you internalize it and you let it be a foundational understanding. You are not what you've done. You're not what you've been through, you know? So when they come back and they try to, all right, well, this is why it's okay for you to always feel shame, you have to remember, one, shame don't move shit. Don't ever let nobody shame you. Don't ever let nobody shame you. Now, shame is different from accountability. Accountability can bring shame, but that ain't what I'm talking about. I'm really working past my shame, you know. It's like, yeah, it's okay that you exist, bro. You know, it's okay that you exist, and it's okay that other people know you exist. And it's okay if people have to be affected with the fact that you exist and the fact that you're going to do the things that you're going to do. And it's okay that you'll be wrong sometimes, and it's okay that you might change your mind sometimes. I do it all the time, you know. It's okay that you exist. It's okay that some people won't like that. It's okay that some people will be mischievous and purposefully try to hurt you so that they can see you fall, because they're mad that you are so confident or happy or whatever. It's okay. You ain't gotta feel shame for that. You ain't gotta feel shameful because you a real nigga and niggas mad about it, you know. You could let them feel shame. Don't let people project and distort your energy because they feel, distorted, and they think that you deserve to also feel it. Make sure that you know what that looks like so you can laugh at them. You know what I'm saying? Shit on them. You know what I'm saying? We be giving up perfect moments to shit on people because we don't notice that they just projecting themselves on us. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Let me leave y'all alone. Work on your childhood trauma. That's what I'll say. Work on your childhood trauma, because now every time, and I'll say every point of the high school, I look back at it. Once I graduated high school, I look back at it, and every once in a while, I constantly look back at it, because the more that I learn and understand about life, I have a whole new perspective on what I went through. Before, it was like, yeah, I was a victim, and I realized over time, when I learned about systems, especially around things like desirability, that I was just a victim. Really, just how the system understands the beauty and furthermore worthiness. And I had to grow. I had to grow and realize that, one, these kids, they're just copying what they didn't understand, and that the level of isolation that school provides, the level of isolation, is really like a smaller incubated simulation for all of these systemic ideologies to be instilled in children. Of course, something that didn't seem so great would feel like it was constant when I was going down the same halls that they happened every single day, and in those same rooms that they was happening every single day. And that's why it felt so deep. And then when I learned that I had ADHD, I realized that rejection dug in me deeper, and that's why the depression dug so deep.
and why those understandings dug so deep. And the more that I understand about myself, I also understand I might have been a lot more annoying than other kids because of my ADHD and me not noticing. I used to be one of those kids that would wake up in the morning and be like, I'm going to school and I ain't talking to nobody because I always talk too much and I'm really trying to talk way less. So I'm going to go to school. I ain't going to say nothing to nobody. I'll say hi, and then I won't say nothing. And so then I'll come in class and I'll say hi, and then somebody will talk to me, and then I'll just have a real talkative day just like anybody else. And it would be so frustrating because then I would get in so much trouble. My mom would scream at me like, I told you not to talk, blah, 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 blah. You know, and then I'd get in trouble in class for talking too much, even though I would genuinely be trying every single day. And I had to also just remember, you're living in an ableist world. You're not stupid. You know, like when you really take a step back and you really grow to learn more about yourself and then look back at those things, it's like, no, you felt really hurt because those people were calling you stupid and you didn't think you were stupid. But when you looked at how hard it was for you to do things like not talk or remember things or stay focused sometimes, it made me feel like I was stupid. And so then that rejection further instilled that idea in me. And I had to just remember, like, those, you felt that way because you were around ableist people who didn't know any better, right? You felt that way because nobody understood what the proper, I'll just keep using the same words, the proper perspectives to take on caring for you. You know, they didn't understand what needed to be done in order for you to be able to learn in a healthy environment. Or when they did, they didn't care. And that's unfortunate. But now that you are, you know, bigger, greater, and now that all that you have left to do is to focus on what needs to be done in the future, now I'm like, okay, well, bet. I know that I don't succeed in those types of environments, but I do know that I love to learn. So now I know that I have to create my own spaces for study, my own spaces for education, I guess, education. And then I also seen that how, like, because if we're gonna reflect, I also see how much, how validated I felt when I could share those things with other people, and how good it fed my heart or my soul, or quenched the thirst of the fire within me, right? To be able to have those conversations with other people. Then I also learned that I had to find a way to funnel what I was learning to other people so that we can have those conversations and I could feel that thirst quenching feeling, you know what I'm saying? But in order for me to understand that, I had to look back, reflect. Okay, final commercial break. I just wanted to thank you all for watching. My name is Bayano, and I hope you took some good nuggets from this video on how to reflect and do the shadow work to free yourself of those defining experiences so that you can start carving out your own reality. Now, I did this thing that I do where I just stop talking mid-sentence, so we're all going to experience that together while I wait for you to subscribe, share with a friend, follow me on Instagram and TikTok, not Twitter X. Alright, I ain't got no Twitter X. But you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at bayano.I. I hope I see you all again. I don't think there's anything else to say. Yeah, I think I'm done.